Thank you very much. One of the things I most enjoy about my affiliation with Smart Cognition is that the company innovates on all fronts. And the state of AI is such right now that a company could succeed just by taking techniques that are already developed and just turning a crank and applying them over and over. But Spark doesn't settle for the status quo. And it's in that spirit of pushing the envelope that I dedicate this morning's talk to Amir and to the company. We've seen breathtaking accomplishments in AI, but I'd like to raise the bar on what constitutes success and progress. I'd like to advocate for AI systems that are more general and more flexible. Now, the term general AI, or strong AI, or true AI, has taken on a specific meaning. It's come to refer to systems that are conscious, that's self-aware. Think data on Star Trek. We've got a long way to go to achieving that level of machine intelligence, and I'm not here today to advocate for that. Nevertheless, I think we can and we should aim to build AI systems that are more broad, more general, and more capable than the ones we build today. In my view, the systems we build today, the best of them, are idiot savants. They're capable of superhuman performance at one narrow task, but they're completely incapable of other tasks, even ones that are only slightly different from the one that's in their area of expertise. For example, I'm going to draw on some history during this talk. Consider the Myson expert system circa 1980. It was described in the popular press, and even in textbooks, as an expert system for medical diagnosis. Like a lot of AI claims back then, this one was wildly overstated. Myson's expertise was much narrower than medical diagnosis. In fact, it was a classifier that recommended which of a handful of antibiotic drugs to give to a patient known to have an infectious blood disease caused by bacteria. It was about an 8 or 10 way classification problem. At this extremely narrow task, Myson did very well, outperforming human doctors. But its limitations were quickly exposed by William Clancy's dissertation at Stanford. Clancy thought he was going to have the easiest project ever, because he was going to take the Myson system, which was already built and functioning, and just somehow turn a conceptual switch inside of it from being a diagnostician to being a teacher of diagnostic information. All he had to do was to build a tutoring system that explains the rules and the reasoning of the knowledge base, already built, to medical students. He never finished the project, but Stanford awarded him a PhD nonetheless because he identified the core problem. The problem was that Myson contained the knowledge necessary for diagnosis, but not the larger contextual information necessary for explaining or teaching that body of information. He estimated that Myson would need a 10-fold increase in its knowledge base in order to contain that contextual information. In sum, he found that Myson was very narrow and brittle, an idiot savant. AI started with a much higher goal than this. AI started with the goal of general intelligence. In 1955, that was the birth year, John McCarthy defined artificial intelligence as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. The very idea of intelligent machines in 1955 was beyond bold. It was audacious, maybe crazy. I mean, think about those times. Back then, all computation was done by people, and there was a profession called computer, and people occupied that, took that job path, the career path. The first transistorized computers came out in 1955. There were 6 of them built that year. And somehow, against that backdrop, John McCarthy, Herb Simon, Alan Turing before them, somehow envisioned intelligent machines, and Alan Turing designed the imitation game, more commonly known as the Turing Test, to assess the intelligence of these systems. A few years later, Nobel laureate Herb Simon, another of the pioneers, predicted that, quote, machines will be capable, within 20 years, of doing any work a man can do. The early AI researchers believed that every aspect of human cognition could be, and finally would be, automated as soon as somebody just sat down and wrote the algorithm for it. They believed back then in general intelligence. They believed that all aspects of human cognition, playing chess, solving puzzles, reading text, giving lectures, listening to lectures, all these things are examples, manifestations of just one or a handful of common underlying algorithms. So success at any one of them was success at all of them. Early AI researchers were psychologists at heart. They wanted to know how people work. And they built computational models, then called AI, to assess the quality of those models to get some insight into whether they were making progress in psychology. They were psychologists interested in using computers to understand cognition. So roll forward to today. Now virtually all AI researchers are engineers at heart, not psychologists. They're interested in making computers more useful by any means possible. Modeling human cognition might be one way of making progress, but it hasn't proven to be the best way. The more promising path has proven to be machine learning. Consider how the Mycin system would be built today. Instead of manually encoding a body of domain knowledge, we'd instead provide a system with training examples, and the system would learn to perform the task. So machine learning is fantastic because it not only simplifies the process of building intelligent systems, it also yields better results. Unfortunately, it also introduces a new source of narrowness in these systems. Now our expert systems are not only limited to a narrow task, they're also likely to overfit their training set. How could you be any more narrow? The root cause of narrowness is that we're building AI systems that are based on just a single type of knowledge, correlations. That's what machine learning does. It discovers correlations. It might be correlations between a stimulus and a response. It might be correlations between a partial pattern and a completion of that pattern. It might be correlations between a description of a state at one time step and a description of it in the next time step, prediction. By focusing exclusively on correlational knowledge, we're leaving out of our AI systems the contextual information that accounts for the correlations. This was Clancy's observation in the 1980s. Mycin contained knowledge that correlated a patient's symptoms with the drug to prescribe to that patient, but it left out the deeper justification for those correlations, the knowledge needed to explain and to teach. Current machine learning methods discover correlations alone, but nevertheless, these techniques are punching above their weight class. They're doing remarkably well. And to me, that's because AI scientists and engineers have proven surprisingly adept, I'd say talented, at finding clever ways to solve hard problems with knowledge of correlations alone. One of my favorite examples is machine translation. You might think that the right path to algorithms for machine translation is through linguistics. It's through generating better parsing algorithms and better text generation algorithms. But the real breakthrough came from machine learning, applied in a clever way, applied to a training set comprised of parallel texts. These are texts, for example, speeches from the United Nations, which are delivered in one language and then translated simultaneously to many other languages. Machine learning can discover the correlations across languages to express the same content. Text translation without text understanding. That's an idiot savant. AI systems reveal their narrowness to us in multiple ways. For example, one of the biggest research challenges in AI today is explainability. Figuring out how an AI system can explain its reasoning, its conclusions, to a skeptical user. In some domains, think medicine, for example, an explanation in terms of correlations alone is not very satisfying. Another challenge is transferability, another research challenge today. Transferability, automatically using the knowledge from one domain or one task to bootstrap learning or problem solving in a neighboring domain or task. Hard problem. Another symptom of narrowness is that AI systems can be easily deceived. For example, an autonomous vehicle could be tricked into randomly stopping on freeways by maliciously placing stop signs in the lanes of traffic. Stop signs trigger stopping because autonomous vehicles lack a theory of stop signs. They don't know the context, they don't know the backstory that we all have about stop signs. Namely, it goes something like this. When vehicles meet at an intersection, they share a roadway, they share the intersection. So to avoid collisions, some cars need to stop so others can go forward. That's the backstory. More evidence that AI systems are narrow, idiot savants comes from proposals you may have seen for next-generation Turing tests. The goal is to devise a test that will drive, will push progress in AI. So the questions on these tests are necessarily ones that AI systems would struggle with today. But you might be surprised where the kinds of questions that AI systems might struggle with. For example, here's two questions that have been proposed for the next Turing test. First, George accidentally poured bleach into his milk. Is it okay for George to drink the milk if he's careful not to swallow any of the bleach? Explain your answer. 2. When Tom was born, his mother was in Boston and his father was in Los Angeles. Where was Tom born? Explain your answer. How can we build AI systems with the breadth of knowledge to answer questions like these and to explain themselves? I know from experience that knowledge engineers can build these systems, and in fact, we've shown that domain experts, subject matter experts with no training in AI, can also build these systems. But that path is very expensive and it doesn't scale. Another path to building broad and general AI systems is one that I'm getting pretty excited about, and that's machine reading. Imagine a system that reads continuously. As it goes, it builds and populates a knowledge base of with the information that it extracts by reading, a knowledge base that supports automated reasoning, not just recall, and question answering. And as it learns, its ability to read improves. Natural language processing methods, NLP, natural language processing methods have gotten pretty good and can give us a foundation for building machine reading systems, thanks in large part to machine learning. These systems can be pipelined together to handle all the steps necessary to understand sentences, like converting long sentences into shorter ones that have the same content but are easier to read, identifying named entities, parsing sentences, resolving word senses and anaphora. But machine reading is more than just NLP. The system for machine reading would need to start with some learning objectives, perhaps in the form of questions that it's going to be that it will try to answer, or subjects that it will try to master. For example, maybe its goal is to learn about the effects of global warming. It might generate some Google searches, and then it would read those documents for content, building up a knowledge base. These documents might use common terms like ocean temperature and hurricane strength, which would trigger the next round of learning objectives, and the process would continue. The system would crawl the space of documents in the same way that a Google Spider today crawls the internet to index pages. One of the reasons that I'm bullish on machine reading is that the system need not start from scratch. There are a lot of rich sources of knowledge that a machine reading system could tap into today. For example, Wikidata, which is like Wikipedia, except that it's written for computers instead of for people. So its contents are expressed in the form of triples, much like the knowledge base of a machine reading system. These sources can go a long way to providing the semantics, the dictionary definitions, the background knowledge for the words and terms that a machine reading system would encounter on its journey. Another reason that I'm excited about machine reading is that these systems can take good advantage of being long-lived. Most AI systems we have today are one-shot systems. Think Siri, for example. One shot. You give it a question or an instruction, it carries that out, and then the next iteration wipes the slate clean and it all starts again. No history. Imagine instead a long-lived AI system with a lifespan, a memory, a history spanning, say, a decade before you kill it because of its own obsolescence. A machine reading system could exploit its longevity in lots of ways. For example, it could, if it tries to read a document that's over its head, can't get content from that document, the system could make a note to try reading it again in a year from now, when its knowledge base is larger and natural language processing methods have improved. I believe that long-lived machine reading systems will be amazing personal assistants. They'll help us on research topics. They'll help us tame information overload. They'll be broader than the AI systems we have today because they'll know more than just correlations. They'll know everything that's been written. But you know, before we get too excited about that, there's a lot of knowledge that no one writes down, such as the knowledge required to ace that next generation Turing test. No one writes down that fluids mixed together are not easily separated. No one writes down that mothers and babies are co-located at birth. Sure, we could crowdsource that writing effort, but there'd be no end to that. Instead, we need to peel the onion another layer. We need to give our AI systems a deeper understanding of our world. Here's the fundamental reason, just as an example of what I mean by that, if you'll excuse the geekiness for just a moment. Here's the fundamental reason why we know Tom was born in Boston with his mother. It's because birth is an event in which a baby exits a container, a role played by the mother. Due to the nature of containers, during the exiting event, the baby and the container must be co-located. Through observation and experimentation, young children learn about containers. They discover, with lots of linguistic clues along the way, that many things in their world can be modeled as containers. For example, our bodies contain organs and sometimes babies. Rooms are entered. Bank accounts get drained. Hearts are filled with joy. Containing, entering, draining, filling, these are all verbs. These are all events that pertain to containers. I believe there are hundreds, but not thousands, of these pervasive theories like containment that comprise common sense knowledge. In their book, Metaphors We Live By, Lakoff and Johnson lay out the psycholinguistic evidence for that claim. So that's my story of AI. Past, present, future. Like in all scientific pursuits, there's a handful of good ideas that keep coming back until they finally get traction. The idea of general AI, guided by models of human cognition, inspired the field 60 years ago, and is coming back again now to some extent. But timing is everything. We now have an arsenal of effective methods for acquiring knowledge by machines. Methods like knowledge engineering, crowdsourcing, machine reading, and machine learning that will give this idea of building more general, more capable AI systems, will give that idea traction. It's very exciting times. Thank you for listening.